and welcome to Red Devils Talk, brought to you by the newly branded, the slick, the much better one, to be honest. I don't know how we got away with that old logo, that old name, but we are the Elite Football Show. So welcome to the live stream and welcome to our last show as Red Devils Talk before we collaborate with All For United, which we're absolutely buzzing for. But thank you to all you guys for joining us in the stream today. Please give a like and subscribe. Please chuck all your comments in the comment section as well. We're going to read as many as we can out. And I'm joined today, unfortunately, just by 3, not 4. Joe is not about, but Kieran, Mark, Paulie, welcome back to Red Devils Talk.
It's good to be here.
Thank you very much, mate.
Good to be back.
Thank you very much.
I'm
I was on
buzzing.
vacation. What a great time to be on vacation.
Mate, it's raining. It's bucketing it down here. So, look, guys, let's just go straight into it. And I just want to be positive first before we talk about a few of the transfers and a few of the other stories. Evening, James from the One United podcast. Nice to see you here, mate. But look, let's go on to the victory last night against Luton. Look, we made hard work of it. I know we spoke in the group chat a few times. We were saying, look, we look slow. We look a little bit lacking creativity. We're lacking a little bit of match fitness. But in the end, we got the victory. In the end, we managed to secure, a decent run out for the boys. The substitutes definitely made a difference. I'm going to start with you, Kieran. I said, who stood out for you and who were you particularly impressed with?
There was a couple of players that I think stood out, even though it was a pretty boring game overall. I think one that impressed me was Dean Henderson, just for the fact that the biggest criticism that people had was him playing for Sheffield United. He was constantly active, constantly had shots on target, and having to make a lot of saves. But then we saw yesterday that he doesn't have to do anything for the majority of the game. And then when a big moment comes up for him to make the critical save, he makes it. And it's something that people weren't sure if he would be able to do at Manchester United, and it shows that even in terms of just for the cup game, he was able to do that. The other player I think that impressed me was Fred. I think he was way more active. Positionally, he was a lot better than we saw McTominay against Crystal Palace. I think he was way more involved in kind of what was happening. A lot of the time you're seeing Fred coming on the left, the right, center, and he was really spraying the ball around, and it was something good to see because he looks like one of the few players that hasn't lost that step since the game against Sevilla when some of the other players have. I guess the last kind of player that kind of gets an honourable mention, he only played a couple of minutes in the game, was Mason Greenwood, getting an assist and a goal coming on, and you saw the difference when the substitutes came on. But overall, I would say in terms of players that played most of the game, Henderson and Fred for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Paulie, I'm going to move on to you. Do you agree with that? And I just want to ask you, who disappointed you? Because I think there was a few players that definitely disappointed me. I'll let you answer first, and we'll see if you agree. But yeah, guys, get your comments in. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Let's get this video out to more people.
I completely agree with what Kieran said. Henderson was good. That's what I expect. He faced Luton Town, put 2 shots on target. One of them was saved by Bailly. The other one was saved by Henderson. It's a good save. It's more difficult because of the fact that mentally you're checked out of the game for the whole thing when you're not seeing shots in your direction. But it's a save he should have made. A Manchester United goalkeeper should be expected to keep a clean sheet against Luton Town. And you meet expectations. No one really disappointed me in this game, probably because when we put out the 11 that we had, the expectations were lowered. It's not ideal to be lowering your expectations, but when you look at the players that were out there, I didn't expect to be creating a bunch. I didn't expect to be buzzing around. I expected us with Matic and Fred to maintain control of the game and the midfield, but lack that creativity. I thought Lingard was okay, particularly in that at the beginning of last season, I thought he was so bad that he usually took away from the squad. And while he wasn't great, he wasn't taking away. He had some moments where he got the ball in the half turn and looked to dribble at players. And then nothing came of it because that's just the type of person he is. But this was the match that I expected. It's cup football. Just win and move on. They did that. And then you brought on 3 players and you immediately saw the gap in quality.
Yeah, Well said. Look, Mark, I'm going to say something here, and this might be a little bit harsh. In the comments, if you think that, then please call me out on it. But what I will say is it shows how low the standards have fallen in some respect, that people were praising Lingard for working hard and for running. I mean, is that how low that things have got? Because I saw a lot of people doing that. And the second thing I saw as well is that people perhaps, look, I'm playing devil's advocate. People are saying, for example, okay, United haven't had a preseason. I'll ask Paulie about this in a second, but Man City went out there and they completely bossed their game and looked like they never finished. And we look like we're taking so long. So I'm just going to ask you, is this a tactical thing? Or is it simply a case of actually we're just not match fit and we need games to get back to anywhere near our best?
Yeah, I think we're quite clearly not match fit. We've got to remember that Man City have got a bigger depth and a lot more players to their squad that are world class. Yeah. So I think it's a little bit unjustified. I have seen a lot of tweets recently, and usually on the Ollie Out brigade, about how the level has been lowered, and I don't necessarily believe that. Obviously, we've had a tough 7 years, but we are, unfortunately, we're still picking up a load of pieces from the last 6 or 7 years from previous managers. Do you know what I mean? Lingardinho, yeah, he didn't have a bad game, did he? But once in a blue moon is not good enough, unfortunately. So yeah, we're still in a rebuilding process. So I think we've got a lot more to do. After the Palace game, it wasn't particularly great, and it doesn't really bode very well, does it? So it's a difficult one, because if you look at the end of last season, we were knackered by the end, but actually very good. And I know other teams have improved, but we haven't. And we haven't. So, but we still, we still got the squad there in order to do well enough. We need more. I'm not saying we don't need more, but it's. I don't know if it's a difficult one, really. I don't know if it's been lowered. But I think the expectations are higher at the moment, which we need to try and get back to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to read a few comments out. Stephen Reed, if you're going to have a go at players, and you've got to praise them when they do well, and as well as Lingard did do well. Yeah, look, I do agree with that, mate. I'm not saying that he was awful, but I just think that he should have been one of those. We all know he should have been out the door, and to get excited because he did a few runs, as James says here, a few decent passes, and they're all over it. Look, that's the thing. I just think for me that shows the standards from sort of the starting players and then the players behind them, and we need to aspire for better. I'm gonna read out a few more comments. Sport Gossip, hello mate, or a group of guys. I don't know if it's a group of you, but I'm just gonna say hello. This season, I can promise you can see Man United fans will go hard on Aaron Wan-Bissaka. He's not good in the air. They'll slate him. But look, I've already seen a few Wan-Bissaka sort of dodgy tweets recently. It seems to me that nowadays, if a fullback can defend, that's a bad thing. Apparently, it's all about the attacking output. And look, I'm old-fashioned. I'm sure the boys agree with me here, but your defenders have to defend first. We always complain about our centre-back pairing, who's not ready. Guys, put your things on mute if whoever that is when we're talking. Yes. No, it's just like when you look at your defenders, especially your fullbacks, they need to defend first. Simply put, he does need to prove in his attacking output. If people are criticizing him for, just because he can only defend or he can only tackle, I've seen people say that, then that's a problem for me. Kieran, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to say, look, I said to Mark about, obviously, is it a tactical thing or is it just a match fitness thing? But at times, it looks like, and we said this last season, when the sort of top players don't perform, we don't look the same team, and we seem to be relying on that individual brilliance. And I'm struggling to see sometimes the patterns of play. We did it last season, but I'm struggling to see now what we're trying to do at times. Do you agree with that, or am I just talking nonsense?
I think you're talking nonsense. No, but honestly, I think you do see the patterns of play, but when the players are below the levels that they should be, they're a step too slow for these patterns of play to actually work. Because when other teams are able to kind of press you faster than you're able to get through the press, the patterns of play aren't going to work. So what Ollie's trying to do, you still see the same way that they're trying to play from last year. But like the problem is, if there's a couple of them that are off the pace, you're not going to see the same results that we saw after lockdown. And that's what we're striving for, because we're trying to build off what we finished up from last season. That the level that some of the players got to at the end of last season was probably the best levels we've seen at the club, and probably since Sir Alex was back at the club. So we all expected them to build off it, but the problem was it's not a normal pre-season. The fact that some of the players went off on international duty, then went off on holidays, trained for like 2 or 3 days, and then played again a game against Palace, who had been, like they said, training for 2 or 3 weeks. Now, the problem is, and I know people compare it to Man City, who were blistering when they started, but you have to look at the squad Man City have. Man City's squad is miles ahead of us. While we might have a starting 11 that can kind of compete with Man City's 11 on a given day, over a season, those two squads are never going to be close together. And that's the reason why we've been kind of clamoring for these new signings coming, because at the end of the day, we need the squad to improve. The only way you're going to improve the squad overall is that if you bring in players that can play in that starting 11. It's the reason why we've been talking about that we need a right winger, why we need a left back. Because let's say there's a game where Martial or Greenwood or Rashford's not playing well. If you have another option there that's a replacement level, let's say, so that you're not seeing a big drop off when they leave, then you're seeing the squad get better, and you'll start to see a similar performance. But when we saw it last year when we played in the FA Cup against Watford, even in the midst of us playing very well in the Premier League, you saw the huge drop off, and we saw the same thing against Luton yesterday. Even though we said, okay, it's an improvement from Palace, the minute the quality came on the field, you saw the difference between the players. It was almost too easy for the likes of Bruno, Rashford, and Greenwood when it wasn't for the players that were there.
But remember, Kieran, it's Luton.
It is, but
that's the point.
Yeah, but that's
it's Luton. We got to have a bit of perspective.
Yeah, but
this is the problem, though, isn't it? That United fans, one victory, they get very excited. One defeat, it's two extremes, isn't it?
Yeah, but that goes to the point, the fact that it's only Luton, yet the backups on our team weren't able to break them down for the majority of the game. And I
just want to expand on what Kieran said before when you were talking about the patterns of play. And in regards to James, that comment that you just put up there with the first half was prime Louis van Gaal. Louis van Gaal endlessly worked on patterns of play, but he was very, very rigid. And so you weren't leaving your position, versus Solskjaer, a big part of the key is the interchanging. And, when you look at Rashford, Greenwood, Martial, Fernandes, any one of them can go to any place and the other one will fill in. And like Kieran was saying, when you don't have players that are quick enough, it all breaks down. So you put in a player like Juan Mata, who loves to move off that right wing and go somewhere else. But if he goes to the middle and Van de Beek doesn't then go to the right and switch with him and just stays in the middle, or Lingard goes somewhere, Van de Beek drifts to the left and Lingard doesn't move, then it all falls apart. You get two players standing on top of each other. It's also going to be difficult to do this because interchanging is not Odi and Igalo's game. So it's hard to do those, to really breathe through what Solskjaer is preaching when there is a change in that, and not everybody isn't on the same wavelength brain-wise.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Mark, last point I'm going to say on this, I want your view on this before we go on to previewing Brighton. Then we've got some massive transfer news later. Well, not really transfer news. We're going to talk about what's really important, because we haven't got any transfer news apart from Stevens here saying that Tellez deal very close. So that's left back sorted. I hope we sign him.
Friday's news.
yeah, we're gonna really go into what Matt Judge actually
maybe
does.
We'll sign him next week,
or the week after, or in January.
Yeah, you never know. But look, I want to read out this comment to you, Mark, and this is something that kind of annoys me. I'm going to read it out. Sport Gossip says, he says here, even Klopp struggled with Rodgers' squad. Forget signing Ed. Scouser can't even sell players. I don't want to focus on the last bit because we know that's true, but it's this idea that, look, and I agree, the team that Klopp won the league and the Champions League with, If you look at the starting 11, there's like one player that's the same. But the real issue for me is that they're just not the same. It's apples and oranges. People say, oh, well, Klopp had this, so it's going to be okay. It's like people say about Frank Lampard, oh, well, Klopp, it took Klopp 4 years or 3 years to win the title. You're not taking into account anything in terms of his ability and his experience and what he's done in the past. And there's nothing to suggest. I'm not saying Ollie out, by the way. I'm just simply saying when people say, oh, Klopp took this amount of years to win the league. Well, firstly, United don't operate the way Liverpool do, sadly, in terms of transfers. Secondly, Klopp is on a different level to Ollie. He's probably the best manager in the world. So turning around and saying, oh, well, it took Klopp this amount of time. You could have given LVG 4 or 5 years. You still wouldn't have won the league at United, I don't think, with the way we were playing. So what I want to say to you, Marcus, do you agree with that? Do you think that people need to just focus on what Ollie's doing right now and not put this much pressure or expectation and actually look at the situation and think, you know what? Ollie's doing well at what he is, but he's very far from being a title-winning manager with those sort of credentials.
Yeah, he's in an unfortunate position, really. Obviously, his CV's not as lengthy as a lot of other managers. And there was a question asked the other night, what would Ollie be a manager of any of the top 6? Probably not, but I don't think he's a manager for any other team. He needs, he does, obviously, we spoke about this too. He got to 3 semi-finals, and at the moment the team doesn't have that winning mentality, I think, and nor does he. Well, I know he's won trophies at Mould, but this is a different kettle of fish, isn't it? So I guess it is a process. We do need to be patient with him. I think he's, again, being Manchester United, everybody seems to be in the spotlight. We've seen that already twice with 2 of our players. And I think it's very unjustified for Ollie to be in the limelight like he is. I think actually they should probably be a bit more accommodating because he hasn't got that experience and he needs that time to do that. We've said before that some of the things that he's adapted and the personnel that he's changed and, with the scouting and that sort of thing, it's all moving in the right direction. Unfortunately, when it gets to the end of the line, we've got Ed and Matt in the way. But he's doing the right things, and I've had moments where I've been very much Ollie out. Probably Christmas last year when he was going through a very bad spell, and I think everybody was. But we do need to give him time, and I do want him to succeed. I hate to say it, but I really feel that as long as the Glazers and Ed are up the top, then it's going to be incredibly difficult. I did read something today, just very quickly, about Ollie from an unknown source that didn't want to give away any information, that Ollie is incredibly infuriated, rightly so. And he feels like he's being left hung out to dry. And I absolutely believe that. We said that before with other managers. It seems to be a bit of a merry-go-round where, they have a decent season. No money's put into the club in order to improve the team. And then you have a bad year and then they get sacked. And we have seen that. And I think, all 3 managers, bar Mourinho, because of the negativity he brought, I think they should have all been given a bit more time. And
Hader, Mark. Hader, you bring up that question in a way that kind of phrased it a little bit unfairly. Klopp came into Liverpool and they had this plan. Forget about the coaching credentials and their CVs. They had a plan that was, here's where we want to be, and we're not going to do it all in 1 year. We're going to bring in this in year 1, then we're going to bring in this in year 2. And then it was, okay, I just need Van Dijk. He gets Van Dijk, goes to a Champions League final, and realizes my goalkeeper is, can't catch a ball. Let's grab a goalkeeper. And
rule number 1.
He wins the Champions League and wins the Premier League. We know that Ollie came in with the same kind of thing. Ollie came in and within weeks was showing Woodward, here's how I envision the team looking in 3 years. And here is year 1. Here's what we want to do in year 1. We're going to fix the defense. Then in year 2, we're going to do this. We need our right wing. We need this. All of that planning hinges on the board being able to give him what he wants.
But one thing, I agree with that. But Paulie, do you honestly believe? And look, I'm not Ollie out. I'm not saying Ollie out. This is a genuine question we have to ask as United fans. We have to be objective. We can love Ollie, and he's done some great stuff. Behind the scenes, it can't even be, sort of explained how well he's done behind the scenes and what the mess Mourinho left in the 7 years of rubbish. It's difficult. He's operating with one arm behind his back. But do you honestly believe if he had the same backing as Klopp, or the same sort of got the players he wanted, that we'd win the league under him? Do you honestly
100%.
believe that?
Yeah, I do.
I think we would, because I don't think we would, honestly. That's nothing against him. If you look at, let's say he had the backing, and then you look at the other managers in the league, I just couldn't see how he could, for 38 games in the season, out tactically maneuver the likes of Pep, Klopp, and other managers in the league. That's nothing. That's not to say
they do to Pep last year. What did they do to Pep last year? He beat him 3 times. The time that they faced him before that, it was a much more even game, and just a one crazy City goal and one De Gea mistake, and it's 2-0. We had no attack, but defensively we didn't give City much. He's gone out and he's beat Chelsea. His record against the top team speaks for itself, and those were all different performances. There were clear different game plans and tactical plans in each one of those games. He has struggled to find consistency when we're playing teams that sit back, and it was the same issue that we had on Saturday. It comes from, having midfielders that don't push the ball up quickly and not being able to catch teams out and pick them apart. But what happens as soon as, for half the season last year, we were playing with Martial and Rashford, or only one of them, and Pogba was out. What happened as soon as we brought in another good player? What happened as soon as we combined Bruno Fernandes and Paul Pogba? Suddenly, a team sitting back on us wasn't a detriment to us. That was, we're going to pick you apart. And things only started to unravel when we got a little tired at the end. And by unravel, I mean, we didn't look as convincing. We still, didn't lose any games. We took the points and we climbed up the table. We jumped from 5th to 3rd in the last 2 weeks of the season.
One thing I'm going to say, because I'm going to bring Kieran into this before we move on to preview Brighton. Just going to read Stephen's comment. Rodgers cleared out all the Liverpool players, and then Klopp came in and spent millions when he came in and is backed. American owners who have more money, and money is no object. I wouldn't necessarily say FSG have got more money. I just think you got to remember as well and understand that the way Liverpool do their transfer business is different. Their data analytics department is huge. It's the basis of their transfer dealings. They look at players and they essentially buy players on what the analysis says. United don't do that. They don't have that sophisticated plan. It's more like, this player, and then there's a penny pinching. I don't think that they've got more money than the Glazers or United. They don't. But United make more money, but it's about how you spend it. I'm going to add just say a few more comments here. James, my worry with Ollie is we seem to play amazing 18 games, but that's my point. This is exactly what I say. Well said, mate. Then flop and seem spent. He did it when he came in last year, and after lockdown we tired badly. Agreed. I'm going to read a few more. Jackola 134. Hello, mate. With all due respect, I think Ollie's record against the likes of Liverpool City is pointless. You play them exactly 4 out of 38 games. This is what my point was going to be to Kieran.
But Jackola,
one sec. Before biting the big ones, let me just read out one more by Sport Gossip. Ed and the Glazers are smart. They buy one player for a huge amount, but they fail to invest in other areas. Liverpool were missing 2 players. Then they went for Alisson and Van Dijk for the big money. Yeah, but look, they also sell better than we do. But look, my last point, guys, because we've got to move on. But to Kieran is what Jack Curler said. Look, I agree with both sides of it, but that is the truth that you're sort of the big games are important, but the rest of the games are the ones you have to play. And what I think is in the bigger games, it's easier to set up, more compact, to play on the break with the players that you've got. I'm not saying that's all Ollie does, but it is easier to do. It's harder to teach and to coach players those patterns of play and to break down teams. When City and Liverpool go out, they know exactly what they're doing. Too many times for me, I'm not saying Ollie out, but too many times, and we saw this against Luton, it was kind of like, well, what are we actually doing? We know, obviously, when Bruno plays and when Pogba plays, we know what we're going to do, but we've seen as well, the left side is always a side that we overpopulate. The right side is a problem why we need a right winger. But United seem predictable, and that's where coaching comes in. Am I wrong to suggest that?
You're not wrong, but for me, I just feel like the project it's not complete yet. You don't have, for all intents and purposes, we don't have the team that Ollie wanted. At the end of the day, you can say whatever you want, but the striker he wanted to bring in was Haaland in January. He wanted Sancho. Now, if you brought both of them in, you have 2 other players that teams are going to have to look out for. Right now, it was the same before we had Bruno. When Pogba was the only central midfielder, the only person that they had to focus in on was Paul Pogba. The reason why City are so good right now is because if you have two players going on De Bruyne, well then, okay, that's great. Aguero's free. If you have another player going in on Aguero, then guess what? Sterling's free, or Mahrez is free, or when David Silva was there, he was free. That's the whole point, is you need options. The problem for United stemmed way before Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. The problem is our recruitment policy was all about the name. We were interested in Mane when he moved to Liverpool. We were the first ones to go in for him. But the problem was that the board didn't support Louis van Gaal that year. They didn't get Mane when he was one of his main targets in that summer. And instead, he goes to Liverpool and the rest is history. For me with Ollie, and I know there's a lot of people that will say kind of Ollie out and things like that every time we lose a game. I've always been very consistent with how I feel about Ollie, is that he came into the club to fix that team, to fix the culture, to fix everything that was going wrong in the dressing room, to fix basically the whole vibe around the club, because it was a toxic atmosphere during Mourinho and it needed to get fixed. You couldn't just bring in someone like, I know Pochettino was still the manager of Spurs at the time, but you couldn't bring someone in that doesn't know the club at that point in time, because the whole club needed to kind of revert back to what it used to be. And that's what he's brought in. For me, he was never going to be the manager that you were going to win Champions Leagues, win Premier Leagues with. Yep.
So it's okay for me to say, like I said, I've been saying since sort of day one, he'll take us from A to B. And that's my point. A to B. We were a mess. We needed that cultural rechange. We needed to basically stop the rot. He's done a brilliant job at that, and he's moving us in the right direction. But from taking us from B to C, which is titles, which also, it's not just him, it's to do with the board. If the board aren't going to back him properly, then that's a massive problem. But to get from B to C, that's where I have my doubts. I'm not saying I'm Ollie out. I know you guys don't think that. But that's where I have my doubts. And I think it's fair to question that. No one's saying Ollie out, but it's fair to question when you look at the way Ancelotti's come in, and he's still, that team looks brilliant. And he's had longer time with them. Yes, he's bought 3 excellent players, but the point is, still remains the same, that we spent 200 million last year. Maguire doesn't look a better player than he was at Leicester, if I'm being honest with you. He has improved other players, but what I'm saying is that we spent 200 million last year. There still needs to be a better output, in my opinion, in certain areas. I'm going to read out one more comment, Kieran. If you have any? It's a 3-year plan. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. Obviously, we've got to give time. But what I'm trying to say is, we've still got to be realistic. I mean, fair enough if you think we can win the league under him. I personally don't. That's not anything against Ollie. That's not me, Ollie out. But I just want to read out James's comment. When we were in the terrible late 70s, early 80s, Liverpool were dominant. We always gave them a game, and to dwell against the top teams, pros will always raise their games for them. That's a good point, and that's kind of how we are at the moment. I'm going to read out another comment by Sport Gossip. Kieran, do you have anything to add before I move on?
No, it's just to kind of finish on what I was saying, is I always thought that Ollie was kind of brought in to improve the side, and that he would leave it in a better position than when he took it off. The problem that we have is that his plan that he wants hasn't been supported 100%.
I agree with that.
The club will say that they've backed the manager, but when you bring a manager in and they've given you their 3-year plan, and you're in year 2 and you haven't back the manager, you haven't brought in the players he wants or that style of player he wants, well then that's not on the managers, that's on the club. If we don't, let's just say, even if we don't get Jadon Sancho, if we don't get a player on the right wing that plays in a similar style to him, he may not be at the same superstar level as Jadon Sancho, well then there's only one person or a couple people that you need to look at, and the team isn't one, and Ollie's not one. It's going to be all those above. And that's where, until that improves, it doesn't matter if you had Pep Guardiola or Jurgen Klopp as your manager. If you don't have the board supporting you and getting you the players that you want, you're never going to get anywhere. It was like with Pep when he brought in the 4 or 5 different wing backs. If the club just said, we're not buying these players, we have enough players here, win the league without these new enforcements, you see Pep going crazy as well. So look, it's one of those that I think we all know where the blame should go, but I think some people are just going to blame Ollie after every single loss really need to step back and look at kind of the state of the club before you do that.
Yeah, and those people, I will say, because it does frustrate me as well. I'm not Ollie out, okay? I will admit, like Mark, when it got to December, I was, but I think it's very fair. I think we have to question things, guys. We have to question tactically, because I think he got it wrong. Obviously, the players are undercooked against Palace, but it doesn't matter. Like, that was terrible. You have to be able to do that as well. I understand it's a 3-year project. My biggest fear is those monkeys in the boardroom aren't going to support him, and he's going to be, come December, he's going to be on the chopping block. But I'm gonna read out.
He did get it wrong against Crystal Palace. He did. Yeah. But getting it wrong, that's something that every manager has done. Every manager gets it wrong from time to time. And because he got it wrong one time, or just this,
not one time.
I know it's not one time, but if he's getting it wrong, if he gets it wrong against Brighton and then he follows it up by getting it wrong against Tottenham, that's an issue. When you get it wrong every once in a while, that's, you don't overreact to, I got it wrong on the opening day of the season.
Yeah, Frank Lampard got it wrong 4 times against Ollie last season.
Yeah. Look, one second. I'm going to read out some questions, Mark, and then I'm going to ask you these questions.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to read out James's comment. He agrees with you, getting some love, Kieran. He's always says laying the foundations. I agree with that. That is my view. I'm just having doubts whether I think tactically he can take us to the title. But that's not just him. That's also with the Glazers. I don't think we win the league title when they're here in charge, and that is
unless we're lucky.
Unless we're really lucky and we just have a freak year. And James is saying here as well, he did actually block me, guys, on Twitter. When was it? Maybe I was probably in December. Like, I'd never interacted with James. He's one of my people.
How much did you pay him to unblock him?
Honestly, it's funny. So he blocked me. So he blocked me. I saw he was blocking me, so I blocked him back. Then obviously when I got involved in All For United, he messaged Joe like, "Why is Hader blocked me?" And I was like, "Oh." But now I speak to James every day.
He thought you were a troll.
Yeah,
it must have done, mate. I must have said, Ollie, I'll watch in. You can admit when you're wrong, and at the end of the day, Ollie deserves time. But he's a top guy, and James, I love the fact you're getting involved. And I'm going to read out 2 comments for you, Mark, before we go on to Brighton, and then we've got a big last segment about Matt Judge, and I really want to get you guys' opinion on it. Guys, hit the like, hit the subscribe button. So Stephen, thank you for your comments, mate. These are to you, Mark. Do these players feel too much pressure when they pull on the United jersey? And he's also said here with a follow-up, are our players that we've signed over the years United type players? These are 2 fantastic questions, Mark. I'm going to give you the floor, mate, and just go for it.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate it. That's a difficult one. I think it goes back to what I said earlier, because they don't really have the winning mentality at the moment. Then perhaps, it is a massive stage, and it is a lot of youngsters. The average age at the moment is 22, isn't it? 23, maybe.
Yeah, 24, more. Something like that. Yeah, they're young.
So it is going to be difficult. It is going to be, tough for them, and I can imagine it's quite a frightening thing, especially when you've got 1.1 billion fans or whatever it is, and everyone's jumping on your back if you make a mistake. So. Yeah, it is. I'm sure it is, but that's not what they should be thinking about. They should be thinking about their game, improving on what they want to do, and bettering themselves, really. And this is where I said earlier, obviously, they need to have, they need to win more. They need to get something, a trophy or something like that in order to take that next step up. We haven't got anyone in the squad other than Pogba, I suppose, that have really won anything. So it's a tough one, really. I don't think it shouldn't be overwhelming. Probably is, but they need to focus on themselves and the club, and try to sort of ignore as much from the outside as possible.
Well said. I'm going to move on, guys. Now, James has said that mentioning Matt Judge gets his blood pressure up. We're going to mention him at the end in a larger segment, just because we wanted to talk about something apart from just our rubbish transfer sort of strategy. We all know about it. Guys, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. Get involved. We're going to be moving over to collaborate with All For United next week, so that'll be a much bigger engagement. We're going to be going live every Wednesday after Champions League. It'll probably be about 10 o'clock, so you'll get live reaction. Otherwise, I think we might do a bit earlier, but that is to be decided. I'm not only in charge of this. Obviously, I've got to talk to the boys at All For United. But let's move on to the preview with Brighton. Let's start with you, Kieran, then we'll go Paulie, then we'll go Mark. Midfield selection, what's the best balance? I'm going to give you a minute. This is a new segment to the show. I'll give them each a minute to say what their best midfield 3 is. And if they don't do it within the minute, I'll mute their mic, because this is going to be quite fun. Because we've got a few ramblers here, haven't we, Paulie? So,
Kieran
And
I count 3 Ramblers.
Yeah, true.
I count 4.
Yeah, I'm the biggest Rambler here. Guys, I forgot to mention, it was Kieran and Paulie's birthday, both on Saturday. What are the chances? We met each other a month ago, both their birthdays. Paulie, I've got a question for you. You're obviously over 30 now, aren't you?
Yes.
Have you seen a decline in yourself?
Absolutely, dude. You are in for a treat. You wake up, things hurt that you didn't know how they hurt. Oh, it is.
Sounds like you had a great night.
You need to tell Tiago, mate, because obviously when he hits 30, he might decline. So anyway, let's move on. Kieran, you've got a minute. Tell me your midfield 3 and why, and go.
Okay, so I think the 2 obvious ones are Bruno and Pogba. At the end of the day, Bruno creates the most amount of chances on the team. Pogba kind of links up well with kind of the players on the outside. So I don't think there's much argument there. In terms of who the third partner would be, I go between kind of Fred and Matic. Matic gives the defense more balance and more kind of stability from being caught on the counter attack. While Fred, I think, just provides that little bit more kind of pace and activity in the midfield. But for this game, I'm going to go with Matic because I think against Brighton, you need more balance. You need kind of that cover for the defense. Yeah, I know, Mark. It's still my time, though. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. I think that the balance is what we need in terms of this game. So I would start with Matic and then Pogba and Bruno.
Oh, mate. You had 7 seconds left. Stephen here. Guys, get your midfield 3 into the comments. You might even decide you want to go for a 4-4-2 diamond, maybe. Something a bit different because I don't think we've got enough wide players. But Stephen, Bruno, Pogba, Van der Beek, I would like to see that. Does anyone agree? Paulie, do you agree? You've got a minute and go.
No, who's playing defense? Who's staying home? Who's making sure that they don't come right back at you with Bruno, Pogba, and Van der Beek? It could be Pogba. He can play that role, but then you're not getting the best out of Pogba. It's got to be Bruno and Pogba come back into the team, and then it's a question of Matic or Fred. I would go Fred simply because you are playing probably Brighton again 3 days later in the League Cup, and that's another opportunity to rotate your squad. And you'll probably want to rest Pogba and Bruno again. So if you play Matic in that game, you have the opportunity to play someone. Maybe you play Van de Beek deeper and play Mata as more of the number 10, or this is going to sound ridiculous, but you could even play Andreas Pereira there. He looked fine there when he's next to Matic last season. So Matic just gives you more of that balance when you want to rotate it. And this way you don't play him 2 games in a row.
Oh, mate, I gave you an extra second there. I'm being nice. No, I agree with that. That's some good points here. Sport Gossip says Matic, Van der Beek, Bruno with a Mason, Martial, Rashford front 3. I think we agree on the front 3. James has said, and I agree with this, Matic, Bruno, Pogba. Matic is the guy. Matic is the guy. For me, he is the key to United's attack. I keep on saying this. He's the foundation. Why were they so good? Well, in terms of no, God, I'm the look, mate. I'm the man in charge.
He's the man with the buttons.
Yeah, I'm the one with the buttons. You could easily get removed from this streak. No, so,
all you have to do is offer a differing opinion.
Everyone in the group chat. Kieran mentioned Rojo and Jones. I removed him from the chat. So if he does anything with that stuff, but no, look. What I will say is that Matic is the key completely, and I think that if no Matic, then United do struggle to win, even in the smaller games. I do honestly believe that his passing is very, very underrated. Mark, I'm going to give you a minute. What is your midfield 3? Go.
Ever so slightly different, I think. Matic, I think he's probably our most underrated player, actually, and I am a little bit frightened about him perhaps retiring or getting a bit too old. I know he's on the cusp of that now, so I'd put him there. I think Fred, obviously, like Paulie said, would be a great option to have when we go into the next game. I wouldn't play Pogba at the moment, and only because I feel like he needs a bit of match fit. He needs to rest, actually. He's just recovered from Corona. Without sounding morbid, this is killing people, yeah? So I feel like a little bit of time extra to rest, I think would be a good thing. So I'd play Van der Beek, and I would play Bruno as well. I think maybe Bruno can play. Van der Beek can play quite well as a defensive midfielder, so maybe play him with Bruno in front. That would be my 3. And also, we need to break down lesser teams, which Bruno I think would be better at.
Well said. You had 2 seconds left to go. Sport Gossip, I think you've hit the nail on the head here, mate. Oh, what a team! Hello, Smalling, Jones, Rojo, Lee Grant. You will get the block button later. No, I'm kidding, mate. It's that made me laugh. Look, I'm gonna give mine quickly. I agree. I don't think Pogba. I'd rest him for this game personally. I know he's, like you said, he's had COVID. I would probably play. I wouldn't play Fred because I'm keep on getting flashbacks of when United played Brighton a few years ago. Remember, we had Pereira, Fred, and we got beat 3-2. I was in Australia at the time. I got up early, so
That's
look,
Pereira and Fred.
Yeah, I know, but listen, I wouldn't play Fred. I wouldn't play Fred in defensive midfielder role. I'd play Matic there, and then I'd go Van der Beek and Bruno. But I might play Van der Beek further forward. Bruno at number 8. Look, anyone that watches Bruno when he was at Sporting or even at Portugal, he's better as an 8. He's too far up as a 10. That's just my view. But anyway, guys, move on because I need to also be in the minute limit. We're going to do this again. We're going to do this for the centre-back pairing. And what we've done, and you listeners can decide who's going to win. I have a feeling Paulie might not win this, but Paulie's going to be doing Lindelof and Maguire, the best back.
No, I would set up for failure.
Yeah. Kieran is doing Bailly, aren't you? No, to Axel. Axel and Maguire. We're all choosing Maguire because, let's be honest, Ollie's not going to drop Maguire. Yeah. Even though for me, I would consider dropping Maguire, but that's a different conversation for another time. Mark's going to be doing Bailly and Maguire, and I'll be doing Benjamin.
I think I'm already handicapped, to be honest, so we might as well give it to Kieran.
Mate, to be honest with you, that would probably be my choice if I was the manager. I'd try it out. But okay, let's go, Kieran. You've got 1 minute. Why are you choosing Axel and Maguire? Go.
Okay, I'm not going to talk too much about Maguire because we see kind of the ability that he has. He lacks kind of that athleticism. He lacks the functional speed. And the one problem that we've always had with Lindelof, and we saw it against Zaha, he's a terrible one-on-one defender. That's one thing that Axel's great at. He has the athleticism. He has the positional. He has the positional capabilities, and is also one of the stronger centre-backs that we have. He's also a very versatile centre-back. He's played at defensive midfield. He's able to bring the ball out. At Aston Villa, he completed 84% of his passes when he was in the Championship. His position is usually very good. His awareness is good. He averaged about 4 clearances a game. I know I can't remember where I'm at, so I'm just going to keep going until you cut me off. So basically, that's what I think. I just think he's the most ready-made player that's in the squad right now.
And Kieran, obviously, Kieran, this is the first time we've ever done it, and you've just been cut out of time. But the rules are the rules, unfortunately. But you gave a good one-on-one tackling was fantastic. He's so angry at me right now. He's so annoyed. But yeah, the one-on-one tackling is a good thing. And I would agree with that. Paulie, I'm going to give you 1 minute and go.
So let's just call a spade here. As bad as Maguire and Lindelof as a partnership were, United are the 3rd best defense in the league last year. They conceded 3 more goals than Liverpool. Their expected goals against was the 3rd best in the league as well. So it hasn't been that bad. Yes, Lindelof made a couple of mistakes on Sunday. He made a couple of mistakes last August too. And guess what? That narrative flowed through him for the rest of the season, but he didn't get beat for a goal again in the Premier League. So at the moment, that's what you have. And center back partnerships are built on chemistry between the two of them and between the goalkeeper. And Eric Bailly and Axel Tuanzebe haven't proven to be able to stay fit yet. So if you need that chemistry and you need that rep, you need to rely on people to be available. And that's what Lindelof has proven. Also, I have 8 seconds left, guys. I'm timing myself. So,
mate, that's what you should do, guys. Time yourself. Look, you make some good points. What I will add to that, look, changing the centre-back pairing is a risky thing to do. Obviously, Maguire and Lindelof played together for the best part of the season, so that is something to obviously think about. Yeah, to be honest, it's not working for me. But no, statistically they are the 3rd best, so you can't really look past that. And especially when De Gea was having a bad season. Mark, go on, give us why Bailly. I think you might win this one, but 1 minute and go.
Don't sway the jury.
I don't think we've seen enough of Harry and Bailly, and I know we started the game badly, but I think they were pretty solid. He's actually, when they did their speed tests a couple of years ago, he's actually the 5th or 6th quickest player. So that would be something that's something we're obviously missing. We've spoken about a lot. So I know his injury problems have been a massive issue, but if we can keep him fit, I would like to see more of those two. I think Bailly on his day is probably the 2nd or 3rd best centre-back in the league. So that's what I'm going for. Yeah, I've seen a few tweets about it today, and I couldn't disagree with them. So that's what I'm going to say, and I feel that Harry and Bailly would be the best to have.
You're within the time limit. Oh, I've got to say I disagree with that. I just don't see why people rate Bailly so highly. He's had one good season. He has not developed at all. Since for the last 2-3 years?
Hard to develop if you're not playing.
Yeah, no, that's true. But I just don't see why people are saying if he's fit, he's our best centre back. He's not, because the best centre back is Mengi. No, I'm kidding. But I'm going to go now. It's a minute now. Yeah, it is Axel. But look, I just think that we've seen with Lindelof, we know it doesn't work with him. I don't think Lindelof's a bad player. I just think him and Maguire don't work. He's not going to go and drop Maguire, although there is arguments that Lindelof perhaps has some better qualities than Maguire. Bailly can't keep fit. It's a big if. Axel, for me, would probably be my choice. But again, injury records are concerned. So you've got a young guy there who Ollie obviously rates highly. He said he's like Delict. He's got the raw attributes to be a perfect partner next to Maguire. I think it's a risk it's worth taking. He's obviously got a good head on his shoulders, but I would be saying go for Mengi, make the risk, and see how he does next to Maguire. You've got nothing to lose except for you might destroy his confidence, but hopefully that won't happen.
And
James
points
Jackson,
and your job.
Yeah, and your job. Yeah, but James Jackson said here, chemistry of De Gea, Maguire, and Lindelof. That is true, to be fair. Even though they've been playing badly, I would say, well, not badly, but they have obviously not had patchy form. I would say that is a familiarity that you'd be breaking up. And that's also another thing. If you bring Henderson in, that's also a problem, isn't it? Because you've got a different keeper behind.
Yeah, but the question is, can you move on from what we did last year with Maguire and Lindelof as your centre-back pairing? I don't think so. So we're talking about improving the squad. So I don't think you can kind of keep doing the same thing. If it hasn't worked before, it's not going to continue to work.
I think you can. We didn't lose game. We weren't really losing games because of Maguire and Lindelof. We
lost last week because
we
of
lost last week.
We lost last week, but we also again, you're only going to do so well if you let your opponent just run freely at your center backs all game. But last season, we weren't dropping points because of Maguire and Lindelof. We were dropping points because we couldn't put the ball in the net. So if you fix that problem, you can get better. Are Maguire and Lindelof going to lead you to a title? That's a different question, but you can definitely improve upon where you were last year without changing your center backs this year. As long as they maintain their form.
Do you think they're good enough to stay at third?
No, if De Gea improves, De Gea had a shocker last year. If De Gea improves, immediately we save at least 5 goals, I would say. Guys, we've got to move on. Look, this is the section where I'm really interested about. It's a frustrating section, and we're going to be moving on to sort of the transfers. We're just going to pick away. I know we always go in at Glazers and Woodward, but I think we need to address Matt Judge because he's one that is recently now people are starting to pick at him, and I think we need to establish what really his role is at the club. But I'm going to start with you, Paulie, and before we talk about Matt Judge himself, Duncan Castles and Ian McGarry said in the transfer podcast that there was an emergency meeting, a recruitment one, at Carrington, which included Matt Judge, Ed Woodward, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Now, I know you've got a view on this. My view kind of is, why are they meeting now? Like, you should know what you're doing in the summer, at the beginning of summer. What has been said in that meeting? Are they telling him he's not going to get his targets? What is it? So hit me with your theory, because I'm really excited to hear what you think.
Well, for starters, I'm finding it harder and harder to believe anything that Duncan Castles says if it's not Jose Mourinho related. But my issue is, if you're having an emergency meeting on Monday, that is a problem, because like you said, why haven't you had a meeting before? You should be meeting every Monday, or if not Monday, once a week, every week, and then maybe more times, to discuss other things. Where was that? Are you meeting right now to react to a 3-1 loss? Because if you needed a 3-1 loss to tell you, hey, this squad needs reinforcements and needs depth, that's a problem. If you are reacting to a 3-1 loss and saying, oh, we lost 3-1, that's a problem too. You shouldn't be reacting to one match. You should have known, if we won this match 4-0, we still needed reinforcements. When we go out there and lose 3-1, that shouldn't be changing your mind all of a sudden. You shouldn't be reacting rashly to one game. And so the question is, why was there an emergency meeting? Was this just, their podcast trying to rile people up by throwing the word emergency in front of their weekly Monday meeting? I don't know, but they should have at least definitely been meeting every week about this. and definitely not be getting swayed by one result. We knew we needed reinforcements before this. The result doesn't change that.
Yeah, well said. Kieran, I'm going to go on to you. Do you echo Paulie's thoughts on this, or are you of the view that it's actually maybe something has been, just like you say, Duncan Castles? Look, we're talking about it now, so obviously it's going to get more clicks, more views. I'm going to add Stephen's comment here. No direct football, what we need to plan, and other things regarding United. Yeah, look, it's just quite clear as day that having a footballing person in there. We're going to talk about Matt Judge in a second. I'm going to go to Kieran, then I'm going to go to Mark as well, because I've got a follow-up question. But yeah, do you agree with what Paulie just said?
Yeah, look, I agree. If you're having an emergency meeting to do with transfers at the end of a transfer window, it's never going to be a good thing. Look, if they're having a meeting to say that, look, we can't get the funds up for Jadon Sancho, who's the next kind of player that you would like instead, okay, that's fine, but that's not an emergency meeting. Anytime I hear about this in sports, it usually comes after a terrible result, and usually it means someone's getting fired. Because generally it's talking about like a coach or a manager. But in this case, it's talking about kind of the transfer window. Like what Paulie said, I find it hard believing a lot of what Duncan Castles says anymore, because again, a lot of it in terms of what's come out about United, literally within a couple of hours, the story that they were interested in Dembele. Both Dembele's camp, Barcelona and Manchester United all rejected the claims that had happened. They were interested in him earlier in the transfer window, and they were told that it wasn't, that he wanted to stay at Barcelona, and we haven't been in contact since. And you've heard that from guys like Fabrizio Romano, who have contacts probably within the agent circle. So it's hard to believe that, while at the same time then them saying this big emergency meeting. It's very possible there was a meeting going on saying, look, we have 2 weeks left. These are the players that we're looking for. If this doesn't happen by this date, who's the next person on the list? That could have happened, but I don't think it's going to be one of those big emergency meetings that has to happen right now. It could be their normal meeting, and if it was an emergency meeting, well, then that's very bad news for Manchester United and their fan base.
Yeah, fantastic. I will also add to that for the listeners that I did DM a ESPN Barcelona journalist with the question, are we interested in Dembele? I showed these guys a screenshot. He said, no, there's nothing. He's spoken to a club. There's nothing there. He hasn't spoken to Dembele's representatives. But again, if you're not going to buy Jadon Sancho for over 100 million, Dembele is going to be similar for an obligation to buy after a loan deal. So it just doesn't make sense. Mark, I'm going to sort of turn it to a different sort of tangent before we talk about Matt Judge. But what I will say is that you're seeing these ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous reports from the club saying, oh, how they're feeling that the negativity from the fans is affecting the players, that, you know, we should believe and we should be patient in the project. Fans have every single right, don't they? And how dare the club turn around and say that when they're sitting and having an emergency meeting on a Monday when we've got one player through the door who, quite frankly, you know, I wouldn't say that it was a particularly hard deal to do. There's so many other deals that could have been done. We've got Tellez here just waiting. You've got Sancho, there's no movement on there. I'm putting my hat in the ring and saying Sancho doesn't happen. That's just my opinion. This is no one's. It's too late in the window for, and I know Paulie's saying obviously the last week, and we'll talk about that in a second, but I just can't see it happening. United can't agree on the fee. Look, I know Fabrizio said that if Smalling leaves, that should start a domino effect. United should be going for a left back, possibly a centre back. I'm not sure who, and they're still going for a right winger. But it's just so difficult to sort of assess what you believe and what you don't. But how dare the club turn around to the fans and say, stop with the negativity, be patient? It's just disgusting. You've pissed us about for 7 years. How dare you turn around and say that?
Yeah, it's a bit of a kick in the nuts, isn't it, really? The club is built upon the fans. You know, we, rightly or wrongly, pay enough money to go to games and buy shirts and all of the other merchandise to keep them running, essentially. So I feel that was a very flippant comment that isn't right and is incredibly unfair. One thing I will say is I reckon they should have their meeting on a Wednesday night at 8:45 straight after getting valuable information from Red Devils Talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that will remain to be seen. I read a few. I tried to not really get too involved on that one, but I do think it is a bit of a kick And they can't really say that. I mean, they need to keep us on side, really. And I know they're not doing a great job with that, but ultimately, without us, United aren't what they are. Yeah. So I think it was a really poor PR thing, and whether that's true, I wanted to say about the emergency meeting thing. I think you have to take it with a pinch of salt. I think something I've learned over the last few years, even though I do get caught up in it sometimes, until someone's signed and all of this sort of thing, you can't really believe anything. And yeah, it is an awful thing to have come out, really. And I think a lot of fans are rightly disgusted, and they should be. So,
yeah, well said. Absolutely. Guys, I'm going to talk about Matt Judge now. Look, I saw a tweet by Rob Blanchett today, and he said this, and Paulie, I'm going to come to you first. But one of the biggest issues is Judge has been tasked with managing Man United's debt. We've seen his LinkedIn profile go around. He likes to say how obviously his job is to get the debt down. So how ridiculous is it that the debt manager is in charge of negotiating Manchester United's transfers? No other club would do that. And something I won't want to say about that is, I have no issue with business people being in business positions. I have no issue, Edward, with being on the commercial side. I couldn't care less. He's good at his job. He's good at bringing commercial deals in. But imagine if, for example, Edward Woodward left tomorrow, the Glazers would have their replacement in like that. But look at the director of football position. 7 years has gone. They still haven't addressed that. You would never see Ollie getting involved in the financial side of the club. So why the hell is our finance men doing this? You literally have someone who's trying to drive the debt down, who's in charge of trying to buy players to spend the money. It's such a big conflict of interest. How is this allowed? And I don't know where to go from this, mate. Like, maybe you can sort of shed some light, but I don't even think you could put a positive spin on this, mate.
You can't. It is ridiculous. The reason that United have, like you said, no other club would do this, would put the man in charge of getting the debt down in charge of their transfers. That's because no other club has debt like we do. Laurie Whitwell over the summer, Laurie Whitwell of The Athletic, did report that there is a lot more, that Judge's stature in the football world has grown. He's become more respected, etc. Obviously, what Patrice Evra said yesterday, or whether it was yesterday or Monday, flies directly in the face of that. So I can't report here or there. What I can report on is, or what I can say is, Judge and Woodward are essentially punching bags here. I mean, Woodward is no longer the one picking the players and everything. That United have their manager gets a lot more input. Their scouts get a lot more input. It's really manager driven. And then Woodward and Judge go about negotiating it. And they're the punching bags for the Glazers, because at the end of the day, if you read the reports, we have agreed to personal terms with Alex Telles. We are literally just now trying to work out a fee with Porto. We have agreed to personal terms with Jadon Sancho. We are just trying to work out the fee with Borussia Dortmund. The Van de Beek thing happened very quickly, so they were able to negotiate that pretty quickly, and they've been able to negotiate the player side of the other two deals very quickly.
We had Edwin for that.
But at the end, like, we've also heard since July that it's been Joel Glazer has put the hold on the bid. So I think even if Woodward and Judge were doing a good job, and they are not, I'm not saying that they are, but if they were, you'd still see the holdup would be at Joel Glazer being like, I don't want to spend this much money. And that is where the holdup is. Why are we trying to negotiate the price for Sancho down? Because Joel Glazer doesn't want to spend as much money as Dortmund wants. So he has the people who are in charge of negotiating, trying to negotiate it down. And they, in turn, just turn out to be punching bags for him. You know, they're the ones absorbing the punches that belong to him.
That's a fantastic point. I want to just draw on a few things there for you, Kieran, is that we're also trying to drive the price down for Telles. Telles is about £20 million.
Ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. I know we want to get Sancho, but that's ridiculous. That's embarrassing, I think.
Yeah.
You're lowballing Porto. Porto need the money. The Portuguese league financially is a mess right now, obviously. If you're in the Premier League, is struggling. Look at the COVID impact that it's had on the Portuguese league. It's well known. James Jackson says it. Joel wants a Ferrari. He's probably got about 15 in his garage or something like that. But no, what I will say is that's Paulie makes some great points. But the issue as well is that I honestly think that and this is just my view and from what I've read, and you can disagree with it, but United have a lot of debt, as Paulie was saying. They've got probably more debt than anyone else, so they've got a lot of debt. They've got these debt obligations as they are what they are. They're obligations. We have to pay them. That's not discretionary spend. Discretionary spend is transfers. United took out £140 million credit facility because they tried to they have to cover their operating costs. That's wages, essentials, essentially. So the point is that actually, Man United, it seems to me, they're probably worried about the sort of the long-term future, because 7 years of this, they're not in a position to spend. And for me, you talk about them being businessmen. Okay, yes, it's working for them. They're making money for themselves. But from a footballing business point of view, the club are not in a good position to challenge for the top honours, because one, they don't want to, but two, because simply United don't have that money to spend. I mean, Paulie said many times, not having the revenue come in, that's 110 million. It's huge, the match day revenue. But it's just such a mismanagement of the club. But then I guess when you look at it from their point of view, they are doing a good job because they're making money out of it.
Yeah, but I don't think it takes a genius to make money out of Manchester United. I think if any of us ran the club, even with limited business experience, you hire people around you that know what they're doing, and you should be able to maximize the amount that has been put into the club, regardless of how much the Glazers put in, whether it was zero or whether it was hundreds of millions. The issues are always cyclical with Manchester United. You look at the wage structure, it's a joke, which they have to pay. If they brought in the right players, if they didn't spend crazy amounts of money on Phil Jones, Ashley Young, Alexis Sanchez in terms of the wages, well, then maybe you wouldn't need to be constantly paying loads in your discretionary spending, because you'd already have your squad together where it's ready. Because you look at teams like City and Liverpool, they don't have to be buying 4, 5, 6 players like Chelsea are this year. Liverpool, if they just bought Thiago this season, everyone would be like, that's great. And the issue that we have now is because of the terrible spending and kind of the mismanagement of the club, both in terms of the wages, but you talk about kind of the amount of money we're losing in match day revenue. Well, the reason we're losing all of that as well is because we've been so focused on needing that money on kind of a weekly basis, because there's other parts of the club we actually haven't invested in. And that's a big issue. You look at Spurs, you look at City, you look at, well, no, not so much City because not many people go to those games anyway, but you even look at Liverpool. Some of those stadiums, the clubs need that money coming in, especially Spurs. They've just built a new stadium where they spend so much money on concessions, on all the facilities there. I was just there last season for one of the NFL games, and the amount of money they would have been making on a weekly basis is probably crazy. But you don't hear Spurs saying that, oh, we're losing all this money on a weekly basis, because they've managed the finances well. You can say whatever you want about Daniel Levy. He's done an excellent job at Spurs. Now, while there's been seasons they haven't spent, he still has put them in a good financial position. The problem that we have with Judge is that, yes, he's basically in two roles that contradict each other. One is that he's supposed to be bringing the debt down, while the other, you're supposed to be bringing in talent for the team. It's like if you were having someone work on the finance side, but also working as the main HR manager. It makes absolutely no sense for a corporation to do that. Look, I'm fine with Matt Judge being part of a negotiating team because he's been part of business negotiations. And whether we like it or not, when transfers are going down, it's not just football people that are doing those transfers. Well, picking the players and between clubs at the start might be football people. When the actual negotiations go down, each club have their own kind of play or their own individuals they go to. Usually they are kind of chief negotiators that have been in business for a very long time. It's not who you see. So like, it's not the likes of Edwin van der Sar for Ajax. While he may put his stamp on it, he's not the one that's actually negotiating these deals. That he has people doing that for him. So Matt Judge in that position is fine, but the problem is we have an over-reliance on him. We don't have anybody with him, which you need. And that's the problem. We only have what we've been told is Ed Woodward, Matt Judge, we have Solskjaer and his kind of team, and then we have Joel Glazer. It needs to be way more efficient than what it is right now for us to kind of improve on the transfer front, in my opinion.
That's a fantastic answer. That's probably going to be the short clip, either that or Paulie's view on Matt Judge. But Mark, we're going to finish on a different one. David really wants your opinion. Only your opinion, apparently. No, I'm kidding. He was just asking the question. David, thank you for your question. Would you take Son at Man United? I know it's a bit different. I would love Son at Man United. I wanted Son when he was at Bayer Leverkusen. I thought he was a fantastic player. Obviously, went to Spurs, had a difficult start. Looked like he was going to go back to Wolfsburg. I believe that's where he was going to go. And then just exploded. I think he's one of the best wingers in the league. He'd be phenomenal at Man United, whether he's on the left, on the right, up front. His versatility is exactly what we need at the club. He'd cost probably something like 80 million. We're not going to sign him, sadly. Great player. And I just think that Spurs are a very lucky team. Have you got anything to add to that, Mark?
Yeah, I would take him. As you say, versatility. I just think he'll probably cost 109 million. So we can't pay 108 for Sancho. So there's no chance. Yeah, I would take him. I think he's a fantastic player. Like you said, he struggled to sort of get himself, up and running when he came in. But yeah, it's not one I've actually thought about, to be honest. It's actually quite a good comment there. Yes, I would. I wasn't. If I'm honest with you, I wasn't even aware that he would play on the right wing. I think we need to focus on that. The only problem I have with that is I love Martial, Rashford, and Greenwood, and I do not want them to have a break in play, and I want them to be in the team.
Someone starts over Rashford for me, mate, and his current form.
Yeah, I know that, but I just, again, it epitomises United, and with what Ollie's trying to do, he's trying to bring in young, hungry players, and I just don't think that obviously Son would suit that. I absolutely agree with you. He would start hands down over Rashford. But I don't want. I want to see Rashford. He's done some amazing things recently. I want him to really succeed and get to where he was again. I'd love to see that.
Absolutely good answer. I'm going to finish.
You end up with a bunch of players in that one position. It's like we have 3 goalkeepers on high wages, and 2 of them are good enough to play.
3 of them are good enough.
I would take Son too. I would take Son too if he were free. I would not pay money for Heung-min Son because, again, you're just loading up in areas where you're already strong and leaving the areas where you are very weak untouched.
I think Mark was probably saying, sorry, not Mark, David was probably saying instead of Sancho, would he be an option? Yeah, he probably would be a good option, but it's not going to happen, is it? Let's be honest. Okay, I've got a last question from James Jackson. Paulie or Kieran, which one wants to take this? Because this is a good question, actually. How does the Adidas deal work? Who knows more? Paulie, I'm pretty sure we spoke about
consecutive years. It goes down by a lot of money, almost half, if we miss out on the Champions League for 2 consecutive years.
Yeah, which is what has happened, hasn't it?
No, it has not.
Because we qualified this year. If we didn't qualify this year, it would have gone down in half. But now,
when did we sign the deal?
2015, 16 was the first year that we had it, so we signed it a year before that.
So we won't lose it.
Yeah, we missed out in a row then, so we just missed that then. So that would have been okay, fine.
Makes sense why we spend every other year then, because they're scared the money is going to go down. But anyway, guys, this is the last time that Red Devils Talk is just going to be on Elite Football Show. So next week we're going to be going live. We're going to be streaming on both our platform and with All For United because we're doing a collaboration. We want to get this show out to as many people as possible. We think it's a good show. You guys might disagree, but no, I'm just kidding. We love your input. It's always great. There's some really great things for this show. Just keep it in your diaries every single Wednesday night, 7:30 if it's not the Champions League. If there's a Champions League game, it'll be right after. So make sure you get involved, tell people about it, retweet it, etc., etc. But thank you guys for joining me today. We did miss Joe, unfortunately, but it was still a great show. So thank you again, and we'll see you all next time.